Let's say your client wants to shoot up against a large window and has to be able to see the detail outside. What do you do and what are your solutions? Well, this is a common challenge, and one thing that we kind of are blessed with here in the UK is that it's usually pretty overcast and grey. But you'll still be surprised at how much light you need to bring into the scenario to balance the outdoors with the indoors. And if you're living somewhere hot and exotic where it's really bright outside, you've got even more problems. So let's show you a couple of solutions. Let's look at this frame with Matt in position. We have got an exposure here of f11. Now, if I wanted to expose from Matt's face, I'd end up blowing the highlights outdoors, and we can see his face there, but outdoors is completely blown out. Now, that may work in some circumstances, but the purpose of this chapter is to demonstrate what would happen if your client wanted to be able to see outdoors. So let's start closing down the iris till our exterior is not clipping at 100%. There, that's a good exposure. Now let's start looking at some lighting options to balance up Matt's face. The first thing I want to do is use the celeb light, because we want it to be daylight balanced. And we know that with that, we can balance up his face. Now that's probably not terribly comfortable for Matt to be sitting under. And also, it's quite a hard light source, but it does work. I don't actually mind how this looks. I think on Matt it works well, it's quite sculpted, but I've seen clients have a problem with lighting that's too dramatic. They get a bit freaked out. So if you want to do something that's a bit softer, a bit flatter, a little bit more balanced, you simply have to go up to a bigger light source. So I'm going to show you another solution now. Using bigger lights definitely gives you a softer effect. Look at this example here. I've got the 400 watt dado light. Now I've switched this on. This is an HMI, so it does take a couple of minutes to come up to temperature. I have put a simple white disc reflector here so that I can push that 400 watt light into this reflector and bounce it back into Matt's face. Let me show you the effect here. So by simply putting this light up into that reflector, I'm taking the hard light source, bouncing it off this large circular area, and that's creating a large soft source. What that is doing is lighting Matt from here all the way up to here. Now the effect of that is very, very flattering. It's a very nice, gentle, balanced source. Now it's worth mentioning here, you might think to balance light outdoors, all you would have to do is put a light here and flash it into his face. But that wouldn't be very flattering. You're actually much better keying the light source from the angle that he's looking into, right? So always key from the angle the person's looking. There's one more thing in this scene which is distracting, and that is I'm actually seeing a reflection in the window of this light just here. So again, using my flag kit, I can simply attach this to flag off the light from spilling out of this side of the light and bouncing into the window. So it's still there. This is really frustrating. There's a reflection and I can't work out where it's coming from. I can see that I've masked that light. So all I need to do is keep going back to this light and adjusting this. What I'm doing is I'm trying to flag off the window without getting into the way of the reflector there. So if I do that right to the edge of the reflector, yeah, that's got rid of it. So sometimes just the tiniest adjustment is required to get rid of a reflection. If I wanted to make this brighter on his face, I would simply move this light closer in towards the reflector. Yeah, and that's given me a little bit more punch in his face. And just finally, what's nice is when you're using a large circular disc reflector like this, you actually get a nice circular catch light in his eyes. But what's really nice about this light source is it's a large, soft, gentle source. It's very natural looking. It's not uncomfortable for your subject to stand under for a long period of time. It looks really soft because we've taken a hard light source and reflected it off a white source. Now, I wouldn't reflect this off a silver source. It would make the light very hard going back into his face. A soft white source is always preferable because it looks very, very natural. Using the Panora 5 has a 400 watt daylight bulb, so actually it's the same output as the 400D, but it's direct through the Octodome. The first thing you notice is it's got a beautiful wraparound quality, but I have not adjusted the exposure from the previous shot, and I'm actually quite a lot overexposed. So what I need to do is reduce my exposure to here. So what this has had the effect of is actually darken down the exterior because we're putting so much light onto Matt. Again, it's a very natural looking light, but he just pops out of the frame even more. So if you need to balance more exterior light with putting more light in the interior, this is a terrific option. So another really simple solution if you've got a 400D is to use that large trace frame where you're diffusing the light direct from that point source, and that's softening the light, giving us a nice look on Matt here. It's similar to using the Panora, but of course you don't need to worry about sticking that big Panora together. This is a nice quick solution. And what I'm trying to do here is give you different options for how to achieve a look. This is a very good way to put more light into the frame because it's almost a direct source apart from this diffusion. You'll find it won't be quite as soft as using the Octodome, but I think it's a good solution. You've got 400 watts of daylight. Again, you can move this closer, you can move the light closer if it was really, really bright outside. So the thing to bear in mind when you're shooting in these environments, and particularly if you're in an environment where you've got a lot of sunshine outside, simply put, the only way to balance the scene is by bringing an awful lot more light into the scene from the interior of the shot. And for that, you really are going to need some big lights. And a 400 watt HMI or equivalent is really the starting point if you want to do a lot of this kind of work.